Hey Amanda, alright, so here is your past life spread. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at where you were, what you did with the majority of your time there, an important day down here with the relationships and the feelings involved, another important day with relationships and feelings, the death card over here, the lessons learned, and we'll get hints of time throughout, alright? So all I'm going to do is relay to you the images and impressions that are coming through, and your job is going to be to try to make connections where you can based off of what comes through here and your current life, and I'll try to help however I can. Just keep in mind there's a couple of ways to make connections, okay? So direct connections would be the information coming through and you can connect and it resonates with you directly. The other way would be an opposite connection where it's like, for example, if somebody dies of smoking, we'll say, a lot of times we'll see someone like that come back and they're either really sensitive or allergic to smoke, or they can't stand the smell of it, or they can't be around people that are smoking, like that kind of thing. So that would be the opposite kind of connection, all right? So you might want to grab a notebook and pen because a lot of stuff comes through. And again, you got to connect, you got to resonate with what comes through. And if you don't, just tuck whatever you don't resonate with, tuck it in the back of your mind for like a later time, because sometimes things come up weeks, months, a year later kind of thing. All right. So let's begin. Okay, so first I want to bring up the idea that what this feels like is coming through is that we're looking at like a feminine female aspect. So with past lives, you can, it doesn't matter what you are now, you could have been something different in another time or in, that kind of thing. So it feels like a feminine aspect. I do want to say that the fact that that comes through like first and kind of like it comes through in a certain way is it feels like it's coming through because we're going to probably get into what feels like feminine issues. So whatever that might mean, I'm sure will come up, we'll be seeing it, but it feels like it's coming up for a specific reason. So already, if you can connect, it would be in the way of your feminine energy in this life and how that plays a role, almost in a way that it might feel limiting. Or it might feel misunderstood or not honored, is what it feels like, if anything. So let's go ahead and start with where we're going. And this card is the Europe card, right? So the Europe card covers a lot of ground. The Europe card, it's not just like Western Europe, pretty France kind of thing. This feels like where we're looking at, what they're giving me is the idea first of like the region or terrain is what's coming through more than a geographical location. So the environment in itself plays a role in some way. So what they're giving me is the image of almost like a very misty kind of place. However, it feels dusty. So it feels like it looks misty, but it's not mist as in dew. It's like, it feels like after a dust storm, before everything settles down all the way, there might still be like a haze to it. So the thing is like I'm seeing land, and I'm seeing like as though looking out across land and sky and you see this haze, right? This can also pertain to, and it kind of feels like it's almost like we're seeing this also as like a symbolic thing as well when it comes to haziness in the way of like, metaphorically like life, like looking at life or what's to come, uncertainty, not being able to see clearly. So lack of clarity is what we're looking at here. Now, what's also coming through is the idea that because we're looking at an environment that is kind of matching what feels like a metaphorical, like a mindset, this could also, for you, connect in a way where you might find yourself in an environment in your life, whether it was your youth or now or whatever, an environment that you felt played on your mindset, or as I'm talking, it's more like your environment does play on your mindset, or I even want to go further and say not just the mindset, but that also links into emotions. So if you find that if you ever travel or when you do travel, if your mood adjusts accordingly to the environment, almost like I want to say like, don't just write it off as like, oh, well, I'm on a trip, so of course I'm in a better mood. It's more like there is energy in different places. This came up in the last reading or reading before this, something about the energy of the place, the environment. You need to give it more credit or more weight. Because here's the thing, it feels like if, let's say you feel mushy mind or you feel unclear or unstable in your foundation or groundedness where you are in the environment you are, wherever you are, it could be because of where you are. So it's almost like, I almost want to say, hey, take a road trip, or like take a day and like get out of where you are. And this is only, of course, if you connect with that mindset kind of thing, if you're feeling those ways. Go somewhere else and see how you feel in another energy signature. And by that, I just mean in another environment that is clearly different from where you are, not just like one city over. Like, get to a different terrain and see how you feel. So, like, if you're in the mountains now, go to the water. If you're in flatlands, go to the mountains. Like, try something different with the landscape. I feel like your environment influences you more than you think. So however you might connect with the environment being an influence in your mindset or emotions. And you might also be able to connect with this in the case that if you moved recently, or when you moved, let's say you have moved, in the past, like 5 years or 10 years, where if you noticed feeling very different or cloudier, or even your emotions maybe like untethered, or like uncertain, or again, lack of clarity, or whatever it might be, more foggy. If you notice that after you moved, yeah, of course it could be the circumstances. It could be like culture shock, or moving to, like having to leave people. Of course, all of that, but there's something about the land itself that your energy connects with, or needs the right kind of environment for. I want to say the word connectivity and conductivity, like the conduit, like how wires send messages, right? I know it sounds so weird, but it's like how wires send messages. It's almost like your environment determines whether the wire remains, like, for lack of better words, like unpierced, or like where it's unknotted, so it's easier conductivity, yeah. So okay, so anyways, connect however you can with that, and if not, just tuck it in the back of your mind for another time. But I'm still trying to see about this, I'm still trying to see where this is, because it's not settling me in just it's not first of all, it's not throwing me again in like the hub or the heart, like a center that we know, like, oh, London, oh, France. It's not like that. I feel like we're looking at someone that sees a lot of like land, not so much city. Hold on. 1 second. Let's see what's going on. If they're not giving me the direct location, then it doesn't really matter. It would be more about the fact that we're looking at land, not being able to see past a certain distance, and not being in the city. So how you might connect with this, for example, is if you so if you came back and you wanted to be in the city where all the people are, where all the news is going on, where there's not drama, but drama, you know what I mean? Like where things are happening, that kind of thing. Because what I'm getting from this is that there's not a lot happening here at all. It's almost a bit suffocating, and it's not just because there's like dust in the air. It feels like it's isolating. So you might have chosen to come back and experience a life where there's a lot of connection, and there's a lot of, again, like busyness or like noise or something like that. That would be the opposite connection. The direct connection would be if you find yourself back in a place where you're just like in the middle of nowhere kind of thing. Now the other thing is, if you're in the hustle bustle, you might need, if you have been pulled or yearning or feeling like you need a break of some kind, this would be a message for you to get out of hustle bustle and go where there is some peace and quiet. So if there's any like hiking trails by you, or if you know you can get away to the mountains, or like a retreat, or somewhere where it's supposed to be quiet and peaceful, and like by yourself, or with a good friend, that, you know what I mean? Like a non-judgmental air, a non-gossipy air, really is what it feels like, which I haven't mentioned gossip in a reading, so there's something having to do with that. So if you're dealing with any gossip, this would be a message to just step back, step away, and not react and get more involved, if that makes any connection sense to you at all. So keep that in mind. Keep making connections with what we're talking about, the land and all this. And if the geography of it comes through more, I'll let you know. But we're going to go ahead and move on to the next card. I feel like there's more here. Hold on. What's going on? I'm just trying to see, like, the air is still staying dusty. It's like, what's going on? And it's like we're in like a home and just looking through a window. And it's like the kind of thing where the sun comes through and it hits the air and it creates a haze. Hazy. I don't know if you're feeling hazy. I don't know. Just keep making connections where you can with that. We're going to go to the next card. This is what you did with the majority of your time. So this is the leisure card. The leisure card, it's usually like not a lot of responsibility, not a lot of expectation coming from you, and it can go either way. It can breed laziness, or which is not bad, it just is what it is. It could breed laziness, or it could breed like lack of motivation or lack of even self-expectation, which almost translates, I feel like it's translating to like a lack of self-worth, in the sense of like, I haven't amounted to much, so I'll just do what they say or go with the flow because I haven't earned my stripes to make the commands. Does that make sense? So it's almost like, who am I to call the shots, because I haven't done as much as they have, so they've earned the right to call the shots or demand or command, if that makes sense. So what's coming to mind is the idea of like, let's say there's a household. This feels like a very like typical like patriarchy kind of like household, where the man works and makes the money and the woman does, you know, what she does at home, or, you know, the mother thing, or the house, you know, mistress of the house, like the keeper of the house. And almost like there are certain areas that are defined where she doesn't get to make the shots and he does get to call the shots, because he's working all day and he's the one making the money and paying the bills. And it feels like it feels like what is typically acceptable for what we're looking at here, this time period, feels like today is outdated. And of course you have the right to call the shots in your own life and demand, what's the word, like respect and equality and this and that kind of thing. Like, it feels like we're looking at, this is like somebody, this aspect of you is in a role. She was born into the role and she continued in that role. And I feel like we're looking at someone who is playing out that role because of the circumstances of the time, right? So it feels like historically, it's like based on her gender and her role, she can only do so much. She can only request so much. She can only demand so much, if that makes sense. So let's see what's going on here. This feels like I'm looking at someone who is dressed. This woman is dressed like in very like, it's like simple but elegant, dark, long dress, long sleeve, long dress kind of thing. Modest clothing having to do with the fashion of the times. And it feels like I'm looking, like there's something specific about the clothing that is house clothing versus clothing she might wear if she were to go to town, we should say. So this could speak, like you can have a connection that it might be like so random, but it has to do with that, like the clothing you wear at home or how you are at home versus how you might dress or appear in public could be very, very different. And there's something about that where it's almost like a message of, and this is only if you connect, but like a message of like, hey, I mean, if dressing at home a different way is comfortable and you like it, there's that, but also it's like almost like don't like not wear your favorite strand of pearls kind of thing at home just because nobody's seeing it. It feels like I'm speaking to the idea of like you doing things specifically for your pleasure. Like wear the fancy dress that you don't get to go out in much or ever. Like dress up. If you want to play dress up, dress up. Like play it, just play it for fun. It's almost like I want to say the idea of like, hey, invite a friend over and play dress up, or you know, like that kind of thing. It almost is, it's like hearkening back to childhood fun just for the heck of it. So I feel like there's a lack of playfulness in your life that you might want to tap back into. And again, only if you connect with this, and if you don't, tuck in the back of your mind, no problem. But that's what I feel like we're looking at is like, use your free time for you. Almost like if you find that whenever you do have free time, you're taking care of other people with it, or you're worrying about other people with your free time, that is something that has got to stop. That has to be, I would say, the very first thing you have to change. And if you connect with this, of course. So if you find that you are finding your thoughts or activities or actions in your free time being spent on outside of yourself, whether it's friends, peers, family, whatever it might be, that has to be the first change that you do. Even if it's a baby step where it's like, pour a glass of wine, put on your favorite earrings, and close the door, and I don't know, just like read a book. I don't know what you like to do, but you know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. Like this has got to, this has to be more you focused, and I feel like that is going to, when you're able to do that, it's going to like let's say what they're showing me is like stepping stones in a pond, and like those stones, you know, like you can just like, it's like a path, and it's like the next one, it will rise up. And I want to say that that's like linking me back to the haziness that we're seeing. Is like almost like, let's say you're on a stepping stone pathway in a pond and you don't see the next one, so you're just staying on the stone that you know is there, but the next one is going to emerge when you take a step in your life like this, like focusing on you, reeling your thoughts back into you, your pleasure, your fun. What do I want to do right now? What would I like to do? And then the stone will appear for you to take the next step, like that kind of thing. But it takes trust and faith, and that's really hard to do when you don't see the next step, right? Or that haziness, you can't cut through it to see beyond the haziness, and there's a beautiful ocean, you just don't know the ocean is there, you know, like it's that kind of thing. So keep that in mind and just connect however you can. Let's see what else is going on here. You might connect with the fashion in general, just the idea that we're looking at like this dress that's plain but pretty. That could be your style, plain but pretty. You like things that are plain but pretty, like simply elegant kind of deal. This could also be, let's see. So I do want to mention one more thing about both cards. This idea that she is feeling isolated in a house, even though the house is beautiful and big. So this house almost has the feel of like how you might see in a movie. You might see like a manor, right? Like a manor, like almost like a mini castle, and it's big and it's beautiful, but yet it's isolated and there's no one there except like people that help out. So it's like the kind of thing where it's like, not everything appears as it is, or like not everything is as it appears, I should say, that kind of thing. So that also wants me to bring up the idea, what are you, possibly, by the way, this is, you know, again, you have to connect, but what are you hiding from? I want to say, let's say people that you might admire, who might think that you're happy with something and then you're not. It's like, and we see this scenario all the time in a lot of people's lives, so you're not alone if this is the case, but it's almost like, are you putting a face up for people who love you, who you don't want to worry? Are you putting a mask on for people, that kind of thing? Do you know what I'm saying? Because that's what this is coming through, is like, she's living in a castle. And I feel like I feel like we're looking at someone who is connected to the person who the property, you know, belongs to, whether it's, and we'll get down more to who that relation is, but it feels like it's not hers. It's like it's not hers, but it is hers. Like she lives there, of course, but I think it's also the circumstances of the time that women don't own property or something like that. But it's not hers. And so outside, it's like, ooh, look where she gets to live. Look at that beautiful place she gets to live. And you know, but really it's like, I'm bored here. Like, this is boring. And the weather sucks and I can't go anywhere and I don't have any friends to play with. And it feels like there's no like animals here, which is weird because that doesn't usually come up, the idea of pets or animals. And it feels like this person really loves animals. And it feels, yeah, okay, so as we're talking, it's like she came from a place where there were little creatures for her to love on, and then she came to this other place where she is now, and it's hazy, and it's cold, and it's boring, and it's empty. And it's like, so if you connect with that in any way, there's this thing, it's like, it doesn't matter how pretty things look. If you're not happy, it's not worth it. it's all about happy. It's all about happy. Like, I don't know if you're in a transition or you're trying to decide between something. Almost like the idea, like, where if you were to tell someone, they would be like, well, you should be grateful for what you have, because not many other people have the finery or the stability financially or whatever it might be that you have. So you're just like basically getting, like, it's like you're not whining. Like, if you're unhappy, you're unhappy. It doesn't matter what it looks like. Like, you probably already know that, but I just feel like I have to say that. So connect to however you can, and if if not, just stuck in the back of your mind for another time. But this speaks about you defining what things mean to you. What is happy to you? It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks or what, they're not living your life. So just make sure you're defining what happy means to you, and then go after that definition. And don't stop until you get it. And even if that means you have to give up something to get it, it's going to be worth it, even if it's really hard to give up and you might not see the full happy definition for a little bit of time. It's going to be worth it. This is not the kind of thing where grass is greener on the other side. That's a different thing. This is not that. This feels like being fearful of giving something up because everyone else thinks and tells you it's a good gig, but something inside of you is like, it's not my gig. It might be good, but it's not my gig. And it's not about grass is greener. That kind of thing. Anyway, so connect however you can with that. And let's see. We're going to go to the first important day. Okay, so here we have the birth card. The birth card, it can be like you're watching someone's birth, you're having a baby, we get midwives sometimes, and then the relationship here is friends. The friend card with the birth card, and the feelings is torn. Oop, oop, there we go. Okay, so what's really good about this, at the same time, it's not like a great situation, but it's really good because what's happening here is it's tying in what we kind of are talking about here. You are seeing people that you love. And the friends, I feel like these are, okay, I feel like you came from somewhere, it's almost like you married into money or something, and you're living in this new place that's away from home, but you still visit home, or word gets to you, and it feels like at least one of a very good friend of who you grew up with is having a child at this time. At least one. I'm going to say at least two. It feels like there's something like the women back home are starting to have their children, as is expected, it feels like. And you as well are kind of at that age here where it's like, okay, time to breed, like that kind of thing, right? So what's happening is you're getting word that these women and old friends kind of thing, it's kind of like today, like how we see, oh, our friends are on their third kid for people who don't want kids, and they're like, geez, like we really chose different paths. But here it's like you don't get to choose a different path. You know your time is supposed to be coming, so to speak, for you to kind of catch up with these people now having kids, and it's kind of hitting you in reality, like you're getting a reality check, like, oh, I guess it's kind of my time and my turn to think about this kind of thing, and it brings you no joy. The idea does not spark you like I feel like it used to. So it's almost like this aspect of you growing up with these people, these friends of yours, these gal pals. It feels like you guys used to talk about getting married and having babies and raising your children together, and you know what I mean? Like it would be such like a neighborly, happy kind of thing. And now that you're at that age and they're beginning that journey, and it feels like they're back at home, like they got married or whatever, and they're, back at home, and it doesn't feel like you're separated by like an ocean. It just feels like it would be a little bit of travel to get to them kind of thing, like not where you could see them every day. But it feels like now that it's time, you're like, I don't feel the giddiness I felt back when we used to talk about it. It's almost like you're looking around and you're like, do I want to bring a child into this? Because it's like empty and cold. And then it's like you feel like the only reason I would want a kid is because I'm lonely. And it's like, that's not a reason to have a kid, but it's almost like here at this, it's like this time period, it's like, that's not a reason not to have a kid. Does that make sense? So I want to say that this is coming up. This might be a theme for you in your current life about how you feel about having kids, or if you have kids now, how you felt about having kids, or even how you still feel, because it's okay to have kids and be like, man, this is really freaking tough. And if I knew it would be like this, maybe I wouldn't have, we're only human, right? So it's the idea of like how you feel about creating a family, and also specifically the motives behind creating the family. Did you have kids simply because the partner you're with wanted kids, or you were expected to have kids by a certain time, or your friends started having kids and you're like, I don't want to be left out, right? So it's really interesting to see what those motives might have been if you have kids. Now, if you don't have kids and you don't want kids, that would be an opposite connection to this, or I guess maybe even direct, because she's like doubting it at this point. But it would have to do with this, because the idea of having kids here is all of a sudden is not as grand and fun as it felt when she was younger. So this also brings up the idea that we go through phases as humans, and you have to understand it is okay to be in a completely different mindset or opinion or anything. It's an emotional state. It's okay to be different even every day. But we go through phases, and you have to allow yourself to change according to how you feel inside. You cannot stay the same. If you stay the same despite wanting to change, then you're going to be lying to yourself, and that breeds inauthenticity. And when you're inauthentic in life, you don't reap the abundance and manifestations that speaks to your soul, because it's almost like you're closing off yourself from even allowing yourself to see it in order to accept it, because you're busy lying to yourself in order usually to please other people or not change because other people don't want you to change, because the change, what that means, can be very scary, because it can mean a change not just in your emotionality in your own body, but in all the circumstances surrounding your life, which may affect other people. So there's so many times where people will not allow themselves to change authentically in how they want to grow and how their emotions and mentality want to grow and develop, because they don't want to change the status quo because of what that might mean. They might lose friends, they might lose a marriage, they might piss people off, they might, things can change drastically in order to remain loyal to yourself and what your heart wants. But this is a call to that. It's so important that you do that despite what fears come along with that, with the change. So connect with that however you can when it comes to change. And that, if anything, the message here is to honor the desire for growth and development in your heart and soul, in your mentality, in your emotionality, your spirituality. Okay? Because when you do that, despite whatever it might mean, whatever domino effect it has, that risk and that fear and all this, the change that occurs, it's ultimately going to reward you with what that definition of happiness means to you specifically. And that's why you're here, is to live your life's purpose and your life's journey. This aspect here, it's almost like she couldn't live her purpose and journey solely for her, just because of the being a product of the times. You're here in a time in history when there are so many more freedoms granted based on your gender or preferences or whatever. And it's like that you were born in this time of that much freedom for a reason, and it's to experience it in ways that you were restricted and limited before. So the only thing restricting and limiting you now would be you. And that is not honoring your inner being. To continue to restrict and limit yourself when you're aware of when you are doing that, right? So just keep that in mind. So the torn feeling, obviously we talked about that. You're just uncertain. Again, the haziness, just like knowing you probably have to go forward with it, but finding you don't want to and not understanding why you don't want to. That kind of thing. It's almost like not knowing why you don't know. Right. Okay, so keep making connections where you can with this. You can also be connecting with, by the way, if you find that you've moved away from home, where all your friends are, if you're missing your friends lately, if that's the case, by the way, you know, obviously, if that's the case and you're missing your friends, this could be a message for you to go home, see your friends, you know, like feel it out. Even maybe for the first time, if you haven't, voice how you feel. And like, even if it's specifically about creating a family or, you know, certain steps in life, and see what they say, but it doesn't even, just to see what they say, you know, it doesn't mean take their opinion as truth or as your truth. It's just, you know, put feelers out. If you find you're not expressing yourself to the people that you love, again, because of like the image that's put up, this would be a call for you to just dip a toe in the expression pool and see what you get back from that, okay? So keep making connections. We're going to go to the next important day here. Okay, so this is the war card. The war card, it's like, is war coming? War is in sight. And this can, it's not just war, like war, like literal war. It can mean like war within the self, which is what we're seeing so far up here, but we'll see what comes through here. Okay, so then the relationship card here is the soul group. The soul group card, these are people that come in and out of your lifetimes, and you learn lessons from them. And a lot of times they're really good friends, and there's lots of love. But sometimes the soul group are, souls will incarnate as a human that you come across that actually, like, bothers you, you can't stand them, whatever it might be, because they're meant to help you learn a lesson, and it just looks like they're mean. But once lifetime is over, you meet back up as souls, and they're like, hey, I did a pretty good job pissing you off. And you're like, yeah, you did. Thank you for helping me learn that lesson. I love you. So that kind of thing. And when you think of it that way, it really helps you forgive people. It really helps you forgive and move on once you recognize the lesson you learned from them, and then you start to see them as that soul that came here to help you learn that lesson by being a real jerk, you know? So it's kind of interesting. It takes a lot of like burden off, and it helps like alleviate like bad thoughts you have of people, that kind of thing. It helps you like let go in a way. Now the feeling associated with this is the pride card. So we're looking at pride when it comes to the war and the soul group. Let's see what's going on. Let's see what's going on. Okay, so what feels like's happening, blah, 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 I can't speak. What feels like is happening here is a dual war. It's a dual thing happening. So it feels like there is something nearby, like a war happening, like a legitimate war breaking out kind of thing, but it's not where you live. But where you live is very beneficial for, let's say, housing soldiers or housing people for safety. There we go. Okay, so back in the day, there would be like a fortress, but it would be a whole town, and they can close off the gates and protect everyone inside. And it's like not everyone lived inside, people lived around it, and when they needed safety to be protected, they would come in from around the land around it, and they would come in and they would draw up the gates and protect the people. That's what this feels like. So it feels like, again, like you're just not in some manor somewhere. It feels like this is actually like a full-on fortress. It feels like we are like hinting at royalty, but not royalty. So it's almost like, it feels like you're just like, there's something like you married like high up. Like you married high up, and this, whoever it is, and it feels like you don't see him a lot, by the way, but it feels like this is a fortress, and you're the mistress of this fortress, and it feels like at this time, everyone's called in because of looming danger, we'll say. So everyone comes in, and you draw the gates up, and everyone's safe, and right, that kind of thing. However, there's a lot of like, that's a big deal. So this feels like a really big deal, right? And this makes it so that you are no longer thinking about yourself. It feels like this distracts you from thinking about how bored you are, how isolated you feel, that you don't have friends, that you may not want kids, you don't know what to do, right? So all this stuff is a distraction, and it's also the kind of thing where you're like, well, I might not have a kid right now, but I can show those people back home, I can show them that this entire town are my children. essentially. Like, look at me kind of thing. But it's not like smug or stuck up. It's just like, that's all you've got compared to these friends back home who have their babies and their families and their happiness. And that's so valuable to you. And what you have here, the property, the title, the what is it, like the ability to protect the people, that to them is very valuable. You see what I mean? So it's almost like the whole thing, like, people want what they don't have. So they're eyeing you and they're like, wow, look at her, and her, you know, like, they're like, people are flocking to them, and she's like helping people and keeping them safe and like all this. It's like how they view you is like almost like heroic, like, whoa, you know, and your title, oh, but how you view them is like envy as well. Like, it's envious in a way, but it's not like malicious envy. It's not malicious. Like, there's a lot of love back and forth, right? This is all love, but it's still like they are like, whoa, look at her, and you're like, oh, look at them. You know what I mean? So this is a calling to look at what you do have when you're feeling feelings of, we'll say, like, in the moment, like when you're not happy, you feel like you don't have what you want out of life, or haven't gotten or achieved, or feel whatever it might be. Just look at what you do have that you do love in your life, whether it's a skill set you have, or it's a collection of, like, it could be material things that you love. That's okay. But it's about looking at what you do have and being grateful for what you do have, so that you take your attention away from what you don't have and what you want, so that when you focus on the gratitude, the vibration, we're talking manifestation right now, by the way, this is manifesting. When you focus on what you do have, your vibration and frequency aligns with gratitude and abundance, because you're looking at what you already are abundant in, and that attracts more abundance, rather than when you focus on what you don't have and outside of yourself, your frequency goes to what you don't have. Your lack, the frequency and vibration of lack, right? You probably know this, you probably have heard this before. So it's all about where you place your focus, but it doesn't mean that you have to be grateful for things that you have that you don't value. Do you know what I mean? Like, things that, like, what's coming through is the idea of, like, if you're with someone and they give you like a Tiffany necklace, like they give you like just a beautiful piece of jewelry, but they don't give you emotional support, that jewelry doesn't really matter. Versus someone who gave you a piece of jewelry because they're so affectionate, and it's to show how much they love you and cherish you, and you know that, then that piece of jewelry becomes something sentimental, and there's a vibration attached to that. There's emotion, there's love, there's affection. So then you can look at that jewelry and be grateful for it, because you're like, this is a piece bestowed upon me by my love, versus this is an empty piece of jewelry given to me to make up for someone who won't spend time with me or give me emotional security, right? So it's just about making sure that when you play, like, first of all, place your focus on the things that you have, that you love, that have loving feel to, that are sentimental, not just things like, you know what I mean? Not like empty things. And that is where you're going to, again, what's coming up is that whole, like, stepping on the stone in the water path, like the next stone will rise. That stone of abundance, that path stone, that stone path, whatever, the next step is going to rise up when you're able to do that. When you focus more on, just focus on what you do have right now, what you're grateful for in the moment. You know what I mean? And again, it doesn't have to be material. It could just be like, I am grateful that I am healthy and I don't, have illness, and like that kind of thing. Like, I'm so grateful for being healthy, like anything. That's what I feel like is coming up. But it's just so interesting, because there's something here coming up where you don't know that they look at you with awe, and they don't know that you look at them with awe. So we're seeing a disconnect of people. So we're seeing So what comes through with that, and again, it's whatever you have to connect and resonate with this and what you don't tuck in the back of your mind. But what we're seeing with this is understanding that this is why trust and faith in yourself is so important, and also the idea that what other people think, it doesn't matter. Opinions don't matter. They don't matter at all, because you never know what people are thinking. You don't, like, they can say it. They can say what they're thinking or feeling, but you're not experiencing it. And it's also, that's them. That's their journey for them to experience and feel, and whatever opinions they may have about you and your actions, behavior, whatever it might be, it doesn't even matter, because what they think is not the thing that is affecting your life in a literal way. Your thoughts and actions and feelings are affecting your life in a literal way. So her, we'll say, again, I'll go with like envy or awe or whatever, her feelings of her friends only affect her. Only affect her. So when she feels a longing for their life, she's focusing on lack. When they're feeling a longing for her life, they're feeling the lack, not her, And if she knows that they are envious or feel a longing for her life, that doesn't do anything to her. That's just like a ego stroke. It doesn't affect her life. She just knows it. You know what I mean? And vice versa. So it's I feel like what we're really getting here, like the big thing, is understanding just how separate we are despite us all being connected. You know what I mean? Like, it's almost like the message of, yes, we're all connected, we're all one, and all, that's great. Yeah, okay, yes, love connects us, and that's great, but when it comes to happiness and fulfilling your purpose and feeling content and satisfied with the life that you lived, looking back and not regretting things, it really just matters what you think and what you do about it. Do you know what I mean? It's all about what is inside your head, your mind, your body, your heart. That's what matters. And I just feel like when I start repeating myself like that, I feel like there's something about it that just, it needs to be, like, if you connect, this would be important for you to do, is to just reel everything back in, focus on you, how you feel, your thoughts, your emotions, and don't allow external influences to influence your internal universe. You have to be the master controller of your interior universe. You have to be. And that's going to, I feel like that is going to clear up the haze that we see in the land. Like, it's going to clear the haze. That's going to settle the dust. Once you, like, snip, cut that cord, don't care what they think, don't care what I'm just going to follow my heart and soul and where I'm being led and what I want to do. And trust that when things come up in your life where you feel excited and pulled towards something, that's guidance. That's your guidance. That's not a fluke. That's not a tease. That's not a test. When your insides are being pulled and, like, excited to go down a certain direction, or it could be the smallest thing. It could be just like take a new class, a new hobby, get in the car and drive. Like, that whole just, I'm excited to do this, I'm being pulled to do this. That's your guidance. You have to trust it. That's your intuition. Okay? So keep making connections where you can when it comes to this. Okay. Okay, hold on. Okay. And I also want to say that it is very possible that we are seeing some of these friends back home in your life again, in your current life. If you have, it's not always the same relationship, right? So who might have been your kid in another life can be your aunt or best friend or parent or sibling. You know what I mean? Like, roles are not always the same, but sometimes they are. So the energy of these people would be, you would know these people, at least one, but it feels like there's at least, honestly, here two that would come back and you would know them. The energy would feel like people from your past that you look at and you know that you could have had their life or something similar, and then other people might compare you to them. Or they might have had your life. Like, there's something about comparison, but also love. So it does not feel malicious. unless like you let it get malicious. It doesn't feel like, on a basic level, this feels like friends. It feels like good friends, but your paths went very different ways, where you might not know how they want certain things of your life and you might want certain things of their life, but it's not verbalized. That would be the energy of the people we're talking about. So if anyone comes to mind right now, or you can think of anyone where that it feels like that in your relationship, it's very likely the same people, and it's to learn lessons. And the lesson in this is to stop caring. Literally, like, just like wish them well, happy for you. That's their path. This is my path, and I know that I have everything I need. I'm capable of changing my path if I'm unhappy. Right? So that kind of thing would come up. So keep making connections where you can here. This might also, with the War card and what happened, this can mean that you're very protective over people, that you might have the kind of thing where you want to save people, and you might be where it's almost like you don't take care of yourself because you're busy taking care of others or trying to take care of others. You also might, what's the word, like stress your mind out when you hear or read about large groups of people, communities or whatever that are displaced, you know, because of war. If you've, you know, when you see like the immigrant, like, oh, the immigrant thing, was that a trigger for you? Like people wanting to, you know, come in, or like that whole wall BS, like that kind of thing, don't mind me. Yeah, like did that trigger you in an emotional way? Obviously a lot of people got triggered, but did it hit hard? You know what I mean? Like, how do you feel about people who are displaced because of war and have nowhere to go? How does that make you feel? Is that a thing? Is that emotionally triggering to you? Okay, so just something to consider as well. That's what we're getting here. Okay, so because here it's like the walls of the fortress were actually embracing because they brought people in and protected them, versus a wall that keeps people out, right? So keep that in mind, keep making connections. We're gonna go to the death card over here. All right, so this is the disease and the illness card. What's coming through right away is dirty water, and there's a word for that. There's a word for dirty water when you drink it and it kills you. I can't think of the word. Go ahead and Google it. It's about drinking like unfiltered water, and maybe it's like bacteria or something in it. And for some reason I'm linking it, like there's I think it's like have you heard of the Oregon Trail? Do you remember the Oregon Trail? It was a game, and I think you can, oh, the word, it starts with an S. I think it's called like, is it called like something like sedentary? Google it and see, like dying of bacteria water, or, you know, dying of bad water or something like that. That's what this feels like. So in your current life, if you don't like drinking water, if it's hard for you to drink water, it would come from this right here because you died from water. So this can also mean that you might find yourself chronically dehydrated. So if you have dehydration issues, you get dehydrated easily, it would come from here as well. And if none of that, that's fine. Just those would be, to me, those kind of stand out as connections, but keep making connections where you can with that. You might be someone that just loves water because now it's just so clean and you can get so much clean water anywhere that you're just like chugging water all the time. But this would also be a call that if you're not getting enough water, you need to drink more water. Now, this is the lesson card. Okay, so this is the experience card. This card comes up for so many reasons, but what we're seeing here is an experience of your mind and your emotions and playing with them inside. So this speaks of like living in your head. This whole life here is about living in your own mind, living in your own world, living in your own mind, living in your head. And then the idea of like the only way out of that is through external distraction. So now that I'm saying that, I do want to say there's a message in that, if you connect, about not allowing yourself to become distracted from the stuff that matters, as far as putting decisions off, stalling, not approaching certain topics in your life or certain emotions or feelings or thoughts because they're hard. And I know that's easier said than done, but it is hard to deal with certain things that you don't want to deal with. But it feels like it's more like the experience card. When we're talking about that, it's like a little bit of a message of make sure you're tackling these issues head on. Like it's time to approach certain, and you could take baby steps, of course, but make sure you're just at least taking baby steps, because this isn't a time to just dwell in your mind, because you can actually do things that this aspect couldn't do, again, because of being a product of the time. You have all the resources, capabilities, wherewithal, know-how, connections. You have it all in order to make decisions that you might need to make to move forward, to live the what you define as happiness of a life in this lifetime. You have it all, where this aspect didn't. So all she could do was dwell in her mind until she was distracted, and then when she's distracted, it takes her away from having to think the thoughts she doesn't like to think and feel the things she doesn't like to feel. You know what I mean? So if you find that you are someone that distracts yourself, sometimes that's good, sometimes it's healthy. There's nothing wrong with that, but just be aware when you're focusing on the distractions that are distracting you from things that are also limiting you and holding you back from moving forward towards something that would ultimately make you more happy. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. So keep making connections where you can with the experience card. And yeah, so there's your past life. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're able to make some connections. I hope it's helpful in some way. And thanks for letting me read you.